Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And again, thank you for joining the professor and my YouTube channel. Today, we have one of our very intelligent, smart, brilliant young Haitians. Certainly, we have a lot of them. It's just that we can't get enough of them to Haiti to fix the country. So today we have attorney Badjy Marcelin. She's a Haitian American in the Haitian diaspora. She's a lawyer. She's a nurse. So I am just so happy to have her today and with the professor. We're going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk about career choices because we know there are a lot of Haitian students who are now in high school, going to college, who are in college, trying to figure out whether they should go to nursing school, whether they should go to law school. So this is the right person to tell all our young Haitians who are in college, who are in high school, as they're making their career choices, it's good to listen to someone who have actually done both. She's an attorney who's licensed in New York, and she's also a nurse. So she's going to talk to you about, which career is better and how you can make more money. So this is going to be a very interesting interview. And of course, this is part one of the interview, but we're going to do part two. Part two, I will tell you about, in part two, when we talk about politics, I will tell you a little bit more about how I met this young woman, how I was very impressed with her. And that's the reason she is with the professor today. So I don't know if I should say nurse Marcelin or attorney Marcelin. I think I'm going to say counselor, attorney Marcelin. But since you really working as a nurse, I don't know what to call you. You just brilliant. So thank you
You
so
know
much.
what? Badgy's fine. Badgy's
Oh, no,
fine.
no, 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 no. You earn that title. You earn those titles. I'm going to refer to you either as Nurse Badjy or Attorney Badjy. So, welcome to the professor. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your background. How did you get to where you are now?
Um, my name is Badgy, and basically, I moved here in the United States when I was about 10 years old, back in 1990. So, if you guys do your quick math, you'll figure it out. I've always lived in New Jersey during my childhood, and then eventually I went to Rutgers for undergrad. And I really didn't I got into law a little late. That was like almost toward the end of my college years because honestly, I was thinking about getting into healthcare. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a social worker. I think I was just a humanitarian, but I had a very Haitian dad. So, you know how Haitians do. And I used to always be like a straight student. So my dad was like, be a doctor. And I was like, no, no. So believe it or not, being a lawyer is a consolation prize for the man. Okay. So each time I said I'm gonna be a teacher, he's like, oh, well, try again, try again. I said social work. He's like, quizás hay. I was like, I don't know. Affaires sociales. So he looked at me like, what? So I think when I finally came and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to law school. He's like, "Kunya wa pale."
Now you're
So
talking. I got to tell you, with Haitian parents, right? If you're not a lawyer, you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse, you're nothing. You could be an
no,
astronaut. They don't care.
they don't care. They do
So
not
your
care.
dad was happy that you said to him, okay, I'm going to go to law school, dad, just to make you happy. I'm going to be a lawyer.
Yeah. I was like, okay, that's about good. So yeah. So and then I finished my undergrad. I was a history major. And so I went to law school in Florida State. So I lived in Florida for a little bit. I even worked there. I think I started my first career there as I work in the public defender's office. I
Mm-hmm.
work as a juvenile delinquent attorney. Well, we don't really call them, I guess, they're not criminals. They're more like delinquency hearings we did. And after that, I never really wanted to get into immigration because I felt like everyone would be calling me. But when I moved
But
back
let
to
me
New
ask you a
York,
question. Did you go to law school first before you went to nursing school?
yes, yes, I became an
Oh, yeah, I know your dad.
attorney.
Your dad
Yeah,
wanted to be a lawyer first.
yes. So nursing was just not at first. I was in high school. I thought about it, but then I was like, when I started taking those classes, I was like, you know what? I want to have something fun. This look kind of boring to me.
Really?
So yeah. So I started to like political science. So that's kind of how I got into law. when I got into political science, I really liked legal theory.
Hmm.
And one of my professors actually was one who really got me into really thinking about it. And I remember it was like one of those theory of justice type of class. And he
Right.
was like, yeah, I think you really have the aptitude for it. And I was like, okay,
Oh, you
maybe.
do. You do.
And so that's kind of really how I sort of started looking into law, because I really like political science. I really like history. So I sort of left the sciences alone, and I was just kind of going through it that part. And so I just had a lot of aspiration. I really wanted to be, I don't know, I really wanted those people that wanted to change the world, I guess.
Well,
um,
I see. But listen, once you graduate from law school, when did you decide that you want to go to nursing school? Wait, did you practice? Well,
Oh, that was a long time. Like
well,
when I graduated law school, that was way back in 2004. So
right.
after college, I went straight to law school.
Hmm.
And after that, I swear off I would never go back to school. I was like, no, this three
Oh, yeah.
years
Law
of
school
my
will
life.
do that to you.
Yes. Okay. Because I went straight 4 years. So I didn't take a break. And when I got to law school, I got to Florida State, and my dad dropped me off. First, it was an argument, of course, because I was leaving home. Home was New Jersey.
Oh,
And
your
so
dad didn't want you to go.
yeah, so you already know it was like,
I hate that for
oh.
you.
So there was that argument. But then I ended up winning it because, again, it's law school. I think that's the only reason why I won that argument, because he's thinking in the end, like, yo, I'm going to be a lawyer. So that's okay. That's okay. So he drove me, he took me there. And then I think the few weeks I got to law school, honestly, I was like, oh my God, this is really tough. Like
Oh, yeah.
the Socratic method, I think a
Yes.
lot of people are not ready for it. It's cold call. Basically, the professor call you, start arguing with you, and whatever answer you give him is wrong. And
No,
then,
yeah. I've been there, done that. So
you
that's
know,
true.
so yeah, so it's pretty rough. And so, we're Haitian. What you gonna do? You can't be depressed. You can't say you're gonna quit. It's sign of vocabulary. Like imagine me calling my dad, like, I want to come home. He's like,
Mm.
stop, where you going?
You're that, papa, pada tingin ba sa amin that Haitian,
No, not at all. So once you have Haitian
you're gonna
parents,
toughen it out.
yo, you're gonna tough it out. I'm here, gonna do it. So,
But let's talk
last
about, listen,
year.
let's talk about, for example, I mean, I went to law school. I'm sure you know that.
Mhm.
And I know what people have to go through. I know what I went through before I went to law school, when I took the LSAT, I think I scored about 154, 155. So I didn't really score the 160s and the 170s that get you into the top law school. But I knew I was probably smarter than most people who, would score high. Now, we have a lot of students I know that who wants to go to law school. They're probably watching this show. And what would you tell them about? Let's talk about preparation in terms of your major, in terms of taking the exam. What if you're not a good test taker? How do you prepare yourself if you want to go to law school? Then we'll go talk about nursing. But tell us a little bit about that.
Now, if you're interested in going to law school, so I definitely do recommend that you take some class in philosophy, religion, history, political science, only because that's the bulk of law. It's really thought. It's you thinking. It's not memorizing. It's you processing what you're reading and you understanding what you're reading. Because a bulk of the LSAT is logic. So
Mhm.
it's very good to take a class in philosophy. I think I took philosophy of religion. I took philosophy, intro to philosophy, and it is a tough class. It sounds easy because it sounds like philosophy, but philosophy is actually very hard. Logic is hard,
Oh, yeah.
so logic helps, and that help you with your LSAT. And you definitely want to not wait. Some people would really last minute. I encourage people to try to take the pre LSAT. You
Mhm.
want to take that during your sophomore year. There's a lot of books on Amazon. Some people take the course, but if you don't have the money for the course, you can always do the classes online. You can also buy the book and start reviewing, especially if you know that's what you want to do. You want to review early. I had an internship with a solo attorney because I didn't really know much people, but during my junior year, I did an internship with them for a semester. So I definitely highly encourage that. That way you get the experience, you get to ask questions. So I felt that helped. I also volunteered a lot at the time.
Mhm.
Um, I volunteered with the church. I volunteered with the school. I was part of all kind of activities. I was part of Haru, which was like a Haitian group. So I feel like that helps you with your when you doing your essay. And I feel like a strong essay is also good because regardless of color, school want diversity of thought. They want people who've had different experiences, who've lived in different places, and who see the world in the big why. Like, why do you want to be an attorney? I think that's a really big thing. Like, why is this a big thing to you? And so I think people really have to think about that, like how to present yourself as a total package. Because I do think even if you have a high LSAT score, that alone is not going to get you into a lot of law school because, again, everyone's trying to get in. So when you're trying to get some into a club that is exclusive, you have to stand out. People have to see why. And I think for many of us who are children of immigrant or who are immigrant ourselves, we do have a story of struggling because we don't necessarily come from, families that were already established. And for those of us that do have families that are like in the upper end of, upper class and who were raised in the suburb, if you don't have that struggle story, what you do have to show is that you're an empath. Like, how do you relate to other people? There's so many different opportunities I feel out here. You can volunteer as with the homeless shelter for women, there's battered women. Just look into your area, find something that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can speak it with authenticity. Because I
Right.
think people are able to see when you're fake. So
So
find
I guess
something.
what you're saying is, beside going to school, get a good grades. That's important too. You have to have a good
Mhm,
grades. And most law school, it's 3.0 or above
mhm,
or higher.
of course.
But also being involved in the community, helping the community, especially if you want to go to law school, then you want to get as much exposure as you want to the practice of law. But here's the question that I have for you. When I was growing up in Brooklyn, I came to the US when I was 16, a little older. You came at
Mhm,
10, I came at 16, and
mhm.
that was back in the 1980s, right? Um, I didn't know anyone who was a lawyer. I didn't have a friend who was a lawyer. I didn't know anybody in my family who was a lawyer. I don't, it's just that this was something that I aspired to, that I wanted to do, but I didn't really know how to go about it because I don't know anyone that has gone to law school. So everything that I've done in myself and researching. So I didn't, I get to meet lawyers when I was in college, and I was the president of the student government, and then I needed to hire a lawyer. That's the reason why I started talking to lawyers. Like, wow, okay, this is really what I want to do. But for people like us, people that are first generation immigrants, okay, who came here young and they don't have someone to look up to, but what do you tell them? How do they learn about this? I mean, you mentioned volunteer with a lawyer. Well, you have to know a lawyer to want to volunteer. So what would you tell
Some
them?
school, like your school, once you decide that you want to go to law school, many of them have an advisor because sometimes you have two type of advisor. You have your academic advisor, you have a career advisor. So definitely go to your admission, make use of the resources that your school do have because the schools do have those resources. You may not know about it,
Mhm.
but definitely go there and talk to your advisor and say, hey, I want to be an attorney. Else that you might know. And if even if your school don't have that, I honestly think lawyers are much nicer than people give them credit for. So I'll tell you, last resort, dress nice, show up to a courthouse on high out. I would like to be an attorney. I'd like to know more. Most of the time, even if they're in the wrong, now it's up to you. You have to take that initiative because it's really up to you to chase them down because they're usually busy. But I do think most of them will give you the time of day.
Now, this is okay. So, in other words, if you are students, you're either in college, you want to go to law school, then you've heard what Attorney Badjy said in terms of what you need to do. Not doing well you have to do well in the outside, you're great, but you also have to get involved in the community. You have to try to get to work to an attorney so you have an idea what the practice is like, if that's what you want to do. So now, Badjy, let's talk about getting out of law school. You graduated, everybody's happy, you're getting ready to take the bar, you take the bar, you pass, you admitted. The question is now, let's talk about money, because I know when I went to law school, my parents didn't have any money, I didn't have any money, I was broke as broke can be. But I know my dad said to me, if this is the last thing I do on earth, you would find a way to go to pay for law school. And I did. But of course, I end up, with a lot of loans that I need to repay. So I know when I was applying for law school, I had no intention of working for a big law firm. In fact, the idea of big law firm, working for a big law firm, never appealed to me. And that's not what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do some community work. I became a prosecutor, of course, and then went into a private practice. But let's talk about the difference between what you want, knowing which part of the law, which part of law you want to practice, and how would that impact your decision in terms of where you go to law school or how much money you end up spending? Because that's important. So let's talk about that.
So when it comes to the financial aspect of it, and I hope in this generation with Gen Z, because of Google, I think they have more information at their disposition than we did. I
Yes.
think the mistake many of us made, I mean, at least for me, was that we assume being a lawyer mean, you at least gonna be well compensated because you're an attorney, right? So you did all the studying. So the assumption is, you're gonna be in a career that is gonna, reward you. However, there is a pay gap, right? And I learned that the hard way. So I really did love my job working with juvenile delinquents. But at the time in Florida, the starting salary was $33,000. Okay. And I looked at my student loan. It was, I want to say, 89,000. And I was just like, this math is not mathing. So I said, maybe if I go back up north, they pay more money. So then I said, yeah, let me just go upstate, go to New York, and I'll take the New York bar. So I'll move back up to New Jersey. I took the New York bar, and from there I got a job as a immigration attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get a little bit more at that point. I was in the 50s, but it still wasn't quite a lot to me. Not that I had to get an apartment, I had to have a car. Um, and of course, people were like, "Oh, you're an attorney, you need a nice car." So I think I got like an Acura or something. So between my car notes and all this other stuff, I was like, you know what? Mm-mm. So then I had a friend of mine who was like, "Badjy, like they have these firms, they're looking for people who speak French." I was like, what? She's like, yeah, just apply. So that's how I end up in working in big law.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I actually applied for one of these, like, I believe like it was like they're like document reviews, or it's like these big firms when they get sued and they need a lot of attorneys to come on board. And
Right.
so they needed people to speak French. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, when I saw that, it was like 60 or 65 an hour. And that was like back early 2000s. So I was like, oh my God. Yeah,
That
okay.
was okay money then. Yeah. 20
Yeah.
years ago, that wasn't
Yeah.
bad.
And that
But
wasn't bad.
but let me ask you these questions, right? Suppose you have a kid now who wants to go to law school, but they said, well, I really want to go into human rights, or I really want to help the community. So most likely this person is not going to end up in the big law firm that we know of, like Baker and McKenzie, and some of the big law firm out there that pays, usually that pay their associate
About 170.
$200,000, right? 170, 180. So for somebody like that, would you advise them to go to a law school where they have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because some of the law schools are expensive.
Yeah, for someone who truly knows what they want. And sometimes I do ask, I know it's hard when you're young to know, like, what do you really, really want? Because I
Right.
do feel like sometimes you feel that's what you really, really want until you see your financial obligation. But if you determine like this is what I really want to do, then my next option is to see, how much scholarship you can have, and then start looking into schools that are geared, like state schools and schools that are in your area.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who, make sure, like if you really say, okay, you really want to do something that is public service, you want to see how much it's going to cost you, because you're going to have to pay that money back.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know they're trying to have student loan forgiveness, but I know the two career they want to keep out of that is law and medicine.
Right.
It's a
Because they
shame.
think lawyers and doctors makes a lot of money. But not always true.
Not always true. And because they forget that there are certain areas in medicine and law that don't pay very well, but that serve the community. And
Right.
so I do feel for, based on that, the country can help out. But if
But
you really, and even for people, I feel like I almost want to tell you, listen, even if you want to go to big law or whatever, the reality is so few people will get into big law, that a lot of it is name recognition. You want to go to a school that the firm that you want to work for, especially if you want to say, oh, I want to be in Miami. If you want to work in Miami, then you want to go to whatever law school like Florida
University
State,
of Miami is a big
University of Miami.
school.
Exactly.
You
You
know,
want to go to
Miami
those
State,
schools.
yeah. They have some really
So,
pretty good law school here that are well recognized down here.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so in other words, whichever city you want to live in,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually better to go to law school in that
Yes.
city because the big law
Yes.
firm in that city
Mhm.
normally will know the law school.
And they
Very
at least have a few partners who came from that school. It will
right.
be easier to approach. However, I say for you to go out of state and spend a whole lot of money, it has to be something like Stanford, Yale. It has to be like instant
Harvard,
Harvard, like the big
Brown,
boy. Yeah,
Columbia,
yeah.
Princeton, some of the
Princeton,
big
like
name
yeah.
universities.
Yeah,
But
so all
there
the
is
big boys, you can whatever it costs. To me, those schools are worth it, whatever they're asking you, because they open doors. Period. That's what they are. They're brand names. It's like you wear your Louis or Louis Vuitton. Everybody know what you're wearing, right?
right.
So it's a big name. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for the name.
Paying for the
It's not
name.
that. Yeah, you're not
You know
paying
what's
for
funny?
the.
Listen, you know what's funny? I got to tell you the story, right? I remember when I was studying for the New York bar, and I took Barbary, which is this organization that helps
Yeah,
people.
I remember Barbary.
And I was in Brooklyn, and I had a study group. You know how you have study group? In my study group, there were two students from Yale, one student from Columbia. I graduated from Florida Coastal in Miami. It was a kind of a new law school. I don't think people even knew the law school at the time. And the four of us were studying together for the New York bar. Guess how many of us passed the bar?
I believe you.
I was in my group. I was the only one who passed the bar the first time. The Yale, the Columbia student fell. I mean, they passed the second time, but they fell. So what that says is that even though those students went to so-called brand name law school, but they didn't pass the bar for whatever reason, I don't know. So I think that if you want to be, if you aspire to be a judge, if you aspire to work for a big law firm, if that's what you want to do, and you have the money and you have the grade and you want to go to a big law school, by all means do it, because I think, like you said, that opens door for you. But if all you want to do is get admitted to the bar, practice law, and help the community, I mean, you could go to law school almost anywhere, as long as you pass the bar, you're admitted. And, obviously, most law school, you wouldn't get admitted if you don't have some kind of intelligence. First, you have to take the LSAT, and then you have to survive the first year.
Yes.
Because the people that sat next to me during my first year in law school, they weren't there the second year. A lot of them were gone. 50% of the class were gone, right? Wasn't that that was your experience, right? How many of your friends the first year we didn't make it the second year?
You know what it is? I went to Florida State, and Florida State was so hard to get in that we only lost a few people,
Right.
like really, because it was just very, very hard to get in. And that was like right around that time. I think they had just taken out, there was like all this hoopla about taking out affirmative action. There was like a lot of talk, but there weren't even that many Black students. I think out of 300 of the class, maybe 20 were Black, 16 were females, and 4 were males. So, and I got in. It was different.
Competitive, yeah.
It was very,
Law
very,
school in general is competitive. I mean, the law school
very.
I went to, they didn't have that many Black students. I think out of 600 students in the first class, maybe 10% of them might have been Black. And out of the 10%, I think maybe probably half of them got out for whatever reason. They didn't complete their studies. But I think for us coming from immigrant community, we work very hard. I mean, I know my parents work really hard. And certainly my kid in New York is on our second generation. Born here, it's different. But for kids that just came from Haiti, where they have parents either who don't speak the language, which is certainly, a deficiency for them, obviously, who's going to this and trying to find a ways Share some of, some of the things you've dealt with as you were coming up as a Black woman.
One
What
thing
are
I
some
would
of the
recommend.
difficulties you face?
Yeah, one thing I'd recommend for anyone, especially kids in high school now or just started college, who wants to go to law school, is that you have to be an avid reader.
Yeah.
That I mean, fortunately for my generation, we didn't have so much distraction. I used to read a lot. So I was a big reader, and that helped me a ton because
Mhm.
I was able to read a lot. So when they gave the assignments, I was able to read it and process it because I'm used to reading. So, I've met people who told me they want to go to law school, but they don't really like to read things that they're not interested in.
Okay, let's stop. Listen, let me tell you this, right? Yeah, listen. For those of you who are watching this interview and you want to go to law school, if you don't like to read, don't go. You're gonna get kicked out. Because
Yes.
law school, it's really about reading. It's about reading comprehension. It's about being able to understand what you read and being able to basically to take a position on what you. If you don't understand what you read, how could you take a position? So I agree with you. And when I was in high school and college, I loved to read. I majored in psychology and political science. I mean, I met in a library at my house. I read at least about 20 to 30 books a year. I just make a list of books that I want to read this year. So I think that for kids that are listening, if you're in high school, you're in college, and you want to go to law school, reading is your best friend. You've got to read. You got to want to read, because I don't know how you survive law school without reading. I couldn't. I mean, you remember those big books, right? You have
Yes.
to like 100
Yes.
a
You
night.
have to read them.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
you have to read these very complex cases, and you got to be able
Oh,
to prepare
yes.
for the class. So,
Yes. So the people that don't like to read Shakespeare, you read Shakespeare.
yes, absolutely. So reading is very important.
Yeah,
So,
reading is fundamental. So that and
but listen,
fortunately,
Badjy, you know what our problem is, and I have to say this, especially for the Generation Z. Uh, People spend so much time in social media, for example, like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Nobody reads anymore.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
to me, I mean, listen, I am lucky because I have kids for whatever reason. I don't know how they love to read. My daughter is just an avid reader. She spent hours in the library. She loves to read. She'll read anything. She wants to be a lawyer. And I say, God bless you, because I don't know how can you go to law school if you spend all your time on TikTok. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying TikTok is bad. I'm on TikTok, but I'm just saying that reading is so fundamental to what you want to
Yeah.
do as a lawyer. How could you be a lawyer and not wanting to read? I mean, to me, it's that kind of help you pass the bar, that kind of help you being able to understand what you read, because it's all about reading comprehension, right?
Absolutely. And I also say read not just fiction, also read nonfiction, read things about the world. You have to know what's going on in the world. I mean, even if you say you don't like to read, just go on Google News. Read the news. Like law require for you to have that type of brain that's able to think both sides. And I think that's one of the reasons that I would attribute to people not doing well in their law school exam, not doing well in the LSAT, and not doing well when it comes to passing the bar. Some people really have a hard time seeing two sides of a story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're someone who wants to go to law school, and when you argue with people, you get upset, you get
Oh, yeah.
angry because someone cannot see a point, you might want to rethink career because
Absolutely.
law school is really you. If I'm arguing with you, even if you don't want me to win, you should be able to understand what I'm saying.
Of
That's
course.
the one thing with lawyers. Like we understand the other side. If you cannot understand the other side, you won't know when to settle. You won't know when to let go. You're gonna still people gonna look at you like you're crazy because that's what it is. Like you have to see when, hey, okay, well, I fold. And part of
Absolutely.
yeah,
But you
and
know
that's
what's funny? The other thing also is, I think what you said is important for kids who are listening. I remember in law school, they would make you argue both sides. They'll say, okay, you argue
absolutely.
this side, you argue. So in other words, you take a position, and they say, well,
Hmm.
argue against your position.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
which kind of train your mind
Hmm.
to to have an open mind. And I think that reading, certainly, if you read a lot and you know what's going on around the world, that would certainly help you in making decisions about career, because it would pain me for someone for young people, especially to get into something and they don't like it. I know some lawyers that are miserable. They can't wait to get out because, you know, somebody told them they need to be a lawyer. They decide to go to law school and they find out they don't want to practice law. They don't want to do anything that has to do with law. They don't like to read. They don't like to argue. They don't like to do any of that. So maybe if this is who you are, and I'm not saying you are, if this is the person you think you are, so maybe we're thinking whether you want to be a lawyer might be something you want to do. So now we're going to move to the second part of our interview, and we're going to talk about my favorite topic, nursing, because I can't wait to see how after you practice law, you decided you want to be a nurse, and now you're working as a nurse. So we're going to take a very short break, and then we're going to be right back.